Welcome to my channel. If this exploration helped you see Scripture as a living challenge rather than distant history, we invite you to continue with my channel. Support thoughtful engagement with my channel by liking this video. Like and subscribe for future reflections where Scripture, history, and moral courage meet. And consider sharing this with someone wrestling with questions of faith, authority, or meaning. The Bible does something unusual with Enoch. It does not tell us much about what he did. It does not record a single miracle. It does not preserve a long sermon or dramatic confrontation. And yet, it gives him one of the most astonishing endings in all of Scripture. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. One sentence, no explanation, no elaboration, just disappearance. The silence surrounding Enoch is not accidental. Scripture often becomes quiet when something profound is taking place. When God speaks little, it is usually because what happened cannot be reduced to action or event. Enoch's life was not defined by moments, it was defined by a walk. To understand Enoch, we must understand his generation. Enoch lived before the flood, in a world the Bible describes as increasingly violent, corrupt, and morally fractured. Humanity was advancing technologically, but deteriorating spiritually. Civilization was growing, but conscience was eroding. Sound familiar? Scripture does not present Enoch as isolated from his society. He lived among people, raised a family, worked, aged, but his inner orientation was different. While the world moved toward corruption, Enoch moved toward God. Not occasionally, not emotionally, but consistently. This phrase appears only a few times in Scripture, and it is never used casually. Walking with God implies ongoing relationship, directional alignment, daily awareness, mutual presence. It is not performance. It is companionship. This distinction matters. Many people serve God. Many claim belief in God. Many speak about God. Few are described as walking with Him. Walking suggests pace. God was not dragging Enoch forward. Enoch was not running ahead. They moved together. In a generation defined by rebellion, Enoch lived relationally, not loudly righteous, not publicly confrontational, but inwardly aligned. This kind of faith leaves little evidence until the end. Enoch did not become extraordinary overnight. The Bible tells us he lived 365 years. That means decades of unseen faithfulness. Years of choosing God when no one noticed. Years of resisting cultural drift. Years of walking without applause. The miracle of Enoch's life was not his departure. It was his consistency. Human systems reward visibility. God rewards fidelity. Enoch did not build monuments. He built alignment. And alignment, when sustained long enough, changes destiny. Enoch lived close to the time of Noah. Scripture hints that he understood judgment was coming. But he did not respond with panic. He responded with proximity to God. When judgment approaches, the faithful do not speculate. They draw nearer. Later, Scripture identifies Enoch as a prophet, but not in the way we expect. No recorded confrontations, no dramatic signs. His prophecy was his life, a life that silently testified. Another way is possible. We expect prophets to be loud, to confront kings, to disrupt systems. Enoch disrupts quietly. His holiness does not announce itself. It simply refuses to conform. Then, suddenly, Scripture breaks its pattern. Everyone else, and he died. And he was not. No illness, no burial, no mourning. God removed him entirely. Death is the great equalizer. Kings die. Prophets die. The righteous die. But Enoch does not. This is not reward theology. It is revelation. God is making a statement, not about how to escape death, but about what kind of life is truly alive. Enoch's removal says, this life was already oriented toward eternity. God did not take Enoch because he was afraid of the world. God took Enoch because he already lived beyond it. Death had nothing to teach him. How did God take him? Scripture refuses to say, because curiosity about the method would distract from the message. The point is not how he left. The point is how he lived. In a generation increasingly distant from God, is it possible to live so closely aligned with Him that death itself becomes secondary? And more personally, are we walking with God or merely living near religious ideas? Enoch's story does not begin with mystery. It begins with faithfulness. Before he was taken, he walked. And before God removes anyone, He always looks at how they live. The Bible does not say Enoch served God. It does not say he worked for God. It does not say he led people to God. It says something far simpler and far deeper. Enoch walked with God. This is not religious language. It is relational language. Walking implies movement together, shared direction, and ongoing awareness. Enoch's faith was not an event. It was a way of life. Belief can be occasional. Walking is continual. Belief can be private. Walking shapes every step. Many people believe in God without ever walking with Him. Enoch's distinction was not belief, it was consistency. Enoch did not retreat from society. Scripture does not describe him as hiding in caves or separating himself from humanity. He lived among people whose values were collapsing, yet he remained aligned with God. This reveals an important truth. Holiness is not withdrawal, it is orientation. Many assume that righteousness requires leaving the world. Enoch proves otherwise. He remained present without being absorbed. He engaged life without adopting corruption. This is rare, and it is costly. The pre-flood world was not ignorant, it was advanced. Cities were forming. Culture was expanding. Technology was developing. Yet morality was eroding. Violence increased. Human pride intensified. God's authority was dismissed. Enoch lived in the tension between progress and decay. Every generation claims difficulty, but few face moral confusion on a global scale. Enoch lived when truth was negotiable. Power replaced conscience. God was increasingly ignored. Sound familiar? His life answers a modern question. Is faith possible without isolation or compromise? Walking suggests repetition. Every step requires choice. Enoch chose God. When others mocked righteousness, when compromise was rewarded, when faith seemed impractical, there is no record of applause, there is no indication of success, only faithfulness. Impact impresses people. Consistency honors God. Enoch did not change the world. He changed direction, and that was enough. God is not looking for dramatic influence. He is looking for alignment. Enoch did not receive revelation in order to walk with God. He walked with God, and revelation followed. This order matters. Many seek insight without intimacy. God gives revelation to those already walking. Later scripture identifies Enoch as a prophet, but his prophecy was not primarily spoken, it was embodied. His life testified that God is still near even when the world drifts away. Presence itself became prophecy. Platforms amplify voices. God amplifies lives. Enoch had no platform, yet his legacy endures. Because God remembers those who walk with Him, even when no one else notices. Quiet faith is costly. There is no recognition, no immediate reward, no visible success. But God sees differently. He measures faith by proximity, not publicity. Those who walk with God are less driven by urgency. They do not panic at decay. They trust God's timeline. Enoch walked during moral collapse without despair. Why? Because closeness to God anchors perspective. Scripture implies Enoch knew judgment was coming, yet fear did not define him. Proximity replaced anxiety. Those who walk closely with God do not speculate endlessly. They remain faithful. Knowing about God informs. Knowing God transforms. Enoch did not merely know truths. He knew God. And knowing God reorients everything. You do not need a platform to walk with God. You do not need recognition to be faithful. You do not need to escape society to remain holy. You need alignment. In a world that pressures conformity, are we merely believing in God? Or are we actually walking with Him step by step, day after day? Enoch's faith was not loud, but it was deep. He walked with God when few others did, and that walk prepared him for an ending no one else experienced. Human history remembers people by what they achieved. Empires built, battles won, laws written, miracles performed. Scripture often remembers people by something far quieter, how they walked. Enoch is not remembered for what he did. He is remembered for who he walked with. There are no recorded speeches, no monuments, no public reforms. This absence is not a weakness. It is the point. Enoch's life challenges our assumption that impact must be visible to be meaningful. God's economy does not reward noise. It rewards fidelity. Modern faith often asks, what is the outcome? What did this produce? How many were affected? These questions are not wrong, but they are incomplete. Scripture asks first, was this faithful? A life can be faithful without being famous. God's favor is rarely obvious. If favor were always visible, people would chase the benefits instead of the relationship. Enoch's favor was hidden until the very end, and when it was revealed, it could not be misunderstood. Enoch lived long before Moses, long before kings, long before the law, yet his testimony endures. Why? Because relational faith transcends cultural systems, institutions rise and fall, walking with God remains, miracles draw attention. Relationship draws intimacy. God does not need miracles to validate closeness. Enoch's life proves that intimacy with God is itself extraordinary. One of the most striking aspects of Enoch's story is its sudden ending. No warning, no illness, no decline. Scripture simply says he was not. This suggests something profound. God decided Enoch's earthly purpose was fulfilled. Enoch did not live the longest life. Others lived far longer. Completion is not measured in years. It is measured in alignment. When a life has walked fully with God, length becomes secondary. We assume more time means more purpose. Scripture suggests otherwise. Purpose is not about duration. It is about direction. Enoch walked consistently toward God. At some point, there was nowhere else to go. Scripture refuses to dramatize Enoch's departure. No description, no spectacle, just disappearance. This restraint protects the message. The focus is not on the event. It is on the life that made the event possible. The Bible does not say Enoch avoided death because he was perfect. It implies something subtler. Enoch was already living in alignment with eternity. Death had no instructional value left. For most people, death exposes separation from God. It teaches dependence. It confronts finitude. But for Enoch, those lessons had already been learned. His life was already oriented beyond this world. Scripture presents Enoch as a sign, not a method, not a guarantee, not a promise of escape. His life points to a truth. God honors closeness. But how God expresses that honor remains his sovereign choice. Enoch is not an example to replicate mechanically. He is a posture to embody. Walking with God is not about achieving a result. It is about sustaining a relationship. Most people will not be taken like Enoch. Most will live quietly, die quietly, and be forgotten by history. Scripture says that does not mean they were forgotten by God. Faithfulness does not require spectacle. If God measured your life not by achievements, but by proximity, what would your story reveal? Are you building outcomes, or are you walking with God? Enoch's life ended without death because his walk had already crossed into eternity. His story asks us a deeper question than how to escape the world. It asks how to live so fully aligned with God that nothing remains unfinished. Enoch's life did not end in silence. It echoed, though Scripture records little detail. The placement of Enoch's story is intentional. He appears in the genealogy of Genesis like a pause in a pattern. Everyone else, and he died. And he was not, for God took him. This disruption is not accidental. It is prophetic. A prophetic sign does not always speak. Sometimes it exists. Enoch did not merely announce judgment, he embodied a truth. God preserves intimacy even when judgment approaches. Before the flood came Before Noah, there was Enoch. Enoch lived in a generation moving steadily toward divine judgment. Yet Scripture does not describe him as obsessed with catastrophe. He was not driven by fear. He was driven by closeness. This teaches a critical lesson. Preparation for judgment is not panic. It is proximity. Scripture does not say God removed Enoch to spare him suffering. It suggests something deeper. Enoch's life had already fulfilled its prophetic role. His removal testified that God sees righteousness. God distinguishes the faithful. God remains relational even in judgment. Enoch was taken. Noah was left. Both were righteous. Both walked with God. But their purposes differed. Enoch testified to intimacy. Noah testified to obedience. God uses different lives to reveal different truths. This is important. Enoch's experience is not a template. It is a testimony. God's faithfulness does not require identical outcomes. Righteousness does not guarantee escape. It guarantees presence. Later scripture 2 returns to Enoch. Hebrews remembers him for his faith. Jude remembers him for his prophetic warning. This dual remembrance matters. Enoch was not passive. His walk included witness. But his witness flowed from relationship, not from performance. According to Jude, Enoch spoke of coming judgment. Yet Genesis emphasizes his walk. This balance is critical. Truth without intimacy breeds fear. Intimacy without truth breeds complacency. Enoch held both. Many focus on signs of judgment. Few focus on posture before God. Enoch teaches that awareness should deepen relationship, not inflate speculation. Walking with God is the safest preparation for uncertain futures. God removed Enoch quietly. No public announcement, no spectacle. This reminds us, God's greatest acts often happen beyond public awareness. Faithfulness does not require validation. Some read Enoch and ask, how do I avoid death? How do I escape judgment? Scripture asks a different question. How do I walk with God? Enoch's life is not about escaping reality. It is about aligning with God within it. Genesis does not conclude Enoch's story. It interrupts it. This open-endedness invites reflection. It forces us to focus on the walk, not the outcome. In an age of noise, Enoch whispers. In an age of performance, Enoch embodies presence. In an age of fear-driven prophecy, Enoch models relational readiness. Enoch's removal is not the loudest part of his story. His walk is God honored intimacy long before judgment arrived. That is the sign. If judgment were near, not in theory, but in reality, would your life be marked by fear or by closeness to God? Before the floodwaters rose, before the ark was built, before judgment unfolded, there was a man who simply walked with God, and God took notice. Though Genesis speaks briefly about Enoch, Scripture does not forget him. Centuries pass. Covenants change. Kings rise and fall. Yet Enoch's name returns. Not because of what he built, but because of how he lived. God remembers walkers. The book of Hebrews names Enoch among the faithful. Not for miracles, not for leadership, not for reform, but for one defining quality. Before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. This statement is profound. Pleasing God did not require public success. It required relationship. Hebrews reframes faith. Faith is not evidence of results. Faith is confidence in God's character. Enoch's life demonstrates this clearly. He did not walk with God because he knew the outcome. He walked with God because he trusted the one beside him. History remembers power. God remembers faithfulness. Many figures dominate textbooks but remain absent from Scripture's honor. Enoch dominates no chapter, yet his life receives divine approval. This reveals a different scale of value. The book of Jude references Enoch as a prophet. This surprises many. Enoch did not shout judgment from public platforms, yet his walk carried warning. According to Jude, Enoch spoke of accountability and truth. But notice the order. Relationship first. Warning second. Without intimacy, prophecy hardens. With intimacy, prophecy clarifies. Genesis does not center Enoch's warnings. It centers his walk. This balance matters. God does not want people known only for what they oppose. He wants them known for whom they walk with. Enoch's legacy did not spread through institutions. It spread through memory. Generations remembered him as a man who walked with God in a time when few did. This kind of legacy does not fade. Enoch lived before law, before organized religion, before temples or systems. His faith transcends structure. It speaks to those without influence, those without platforms, those without recognition. Walking with God requires none of these. Modern culture equates visibility with impact. Scripture disagrees. Some of the most enduring testimonies are the quietest ones. Faith that survives centuries is often born in obscurity. If your faith feels unnoticed, Enoch understands. If your obedience feels ordinary, God sees it. If your life feels small, Scripture says otherwise. Walking with God never goes unseen. Legacy is not monuments or movements. Legacy is alignment carried forward. Enoch left no institution. He left a testimony. Walkers carry God's presence into their time. They remind each generation that intimacy is possible, that holiness is attainable, that faith does not require spectacle. Enoch's story influenced later understanding of faith. Hebrews uses him to define trust. Jude uses him to warn about accountability. One life, multiple echoes. Many ask, how do I make my life matter? Enoch answers, walk with God, not to be remembered, but to be aligned. God decides what endures. If your life were remembered for only one thing, would it be activity or proximity? Enoch's life outlived his generation because it was rooted beyond it. He did not chase impact. He cultivated intimacy, and God remembered him. Enoch's life does not end with explanation. It ends with implication. Scripture never asks us to admire Enoch. It asks us to examine ourselves. His story confronts a modern tension. Can a life still walk with God in an age of distraction, noise, and spiritual exhaustion? Enoch lived without technology, yet his generation was consumed by corruption. We live with endless tools, yet struggle to remain attentive. Walking with God today is not harder because God is distant. It is harder because attention is fragmented. Distraction does not deny God. It replaces him quietly. Walking with God has never been accidental. It requires deliberate attention, daily orientation, consistent humility. Enoch did not drift into closeness. He chose it again and again. Closeness is always cultivated. One of the hardest realities of modern faith is obscurity. Many obey without applause. Many remain faithful without affirmation. Enoch speaks directly to this condition. God's approval does not depend on human recognition. It never has. Scripture records few names. God sees many lives. The Bible is selective so that we understand this truth. Most faithfulness happens outside of public memory, and God honors it fully. Some interpret Enoch's story as an escape from the world. Scripture suggests the opposite. Enoch did not withdraw from reality. He walked with God within it. Walking with God does not remove responsibility. It deepens it. Enoch lived before judgment without panic. His readiness came from relationship, not speculation. Fear-driven faith obsesses over outcomes. Relational faith focuses on proximity. Walking with God is the safest preparation for uncertain futures. This must be said clearly. Enoch is not a guarantee that the faithful will be removed from hardship. He is a testimony that closeness with God matters more than circumstances. God's faithfulness is not proven by identical outcomes. It is proven by his presence. Most of Enoch's life was ordinary. He worked, he aged, he raised children. Walking with God does not require dramatic settings. It requires faithful presence in ordinary moments. This is where most faith is lived. Miracles are rare. Walking is daily. God values consistency more than interruption. Faith that endures routine is faith that endures silence. Enoch's life invites us to redefine success, not as impact, not as recognition, not as escape, but as alignment. To walk with God until walking becomes who we are. Hebrews tells us Enoch pleased God. This was not through perfection. It was through trust. Pleasing God today still looks the same. Trusting Him when outcomes are unclear, remaining faithful when results are unseen, choosing closeness over control. Enoch's life ended when God decided it was complete, not when it was famous, not when it was admired, when alignment was finished. This reframes how we think about purpose. Purpose is not something we chase. It is something we live into. We live in a generation obsessed with urgency. Enoch lived in patience. We live in an age of exposure. Enoch lived in quiet fidelity. His story reminds us that faith does not need to keep up with the world. It needs to stay close to God. If your life were summarized in one sentence, would it be about what you achieved? Or would it be about who you walked with? Enoch walked with God until walking became eternity. He did not seek an ending. He sought closeness. And God honored that walk in a way no one expected. Not to teach us how to leave the world, but to teach us how to live within it, to walk with God.